Right. Say what's up. First, let's talk about Lyney kit. It's quite interesting and refreshing in my opinion. Normal is normal and plunge is plunge, just like the usual, but hit, charge, attack are a lot more special. It's at 2 charges. First charge deals pyro damage, a second charge fires off a prop arrow that deals pyro damage, and upon hit, it will summon a green Malkin hat. Green Malkin hat can taunt nearby opponents and attract their attacks. Each opponent can only be taunted by the hat once every 5 seconds. If destroyed, or if its duration expires, it will fire up a pyrotechnic strike at one nearby opponent, dealing pyro damage. Only one hat can exist at any given time. When firing the prop arrow and when Lyney has more than 60% HP, he will consume a portion of his HP to obtain one prop surplus stack, max 5 stack. The effect will be removed after the character spends 30 seconds out of combat. The lowest Lyney's HP can drop to through this method is 60% of his max HP, which means if you are at 60% or under 60% of your max HP, it will no longer consume your HP. Oh, it also do pneuma damage. It's a new type of mechanic being introduced to version 4.0. Some enemies will have weaknesses against either pneuma or Uja. Attack with the same type will pop the weakness. Lyney elemental skill, Bewildering Light. When used, he will clear all current prop surplus stack and deal AoE pyro damage to opponents in front of him. Damage will be increased according to the stacks clear or rather consume, and this will also regenerate Lyney HP based on his max HP.
Let me try my blade.
And voila!
When Green Malkin hat created by Lyney is on the field, the firework will cause it to explode, deal AoE pyro damage equal to that of the pyrotechnic strike. The damage dealt through the Green Malkin hat in this way is considered charge attack damage. Anyway, Lyney's elemental burst is quite straightforward.
Let's get this show on the road!
Lyney turns himself into a Green Malkin cat that can be moved around quickly. Green Malkin cat, not hat. The Green Malkin cat get close to opponents, it will send flame falling down on them, dealing at most 1 instant of pyro damage to each opponent. When the duration ends, he will dismiss the Green Malkin cat and ignite firework that deal AoE pyro damage. Summon 1 Green Malkin hat and grant himself 1 prop surplus stack. Sheesh, that was quite a lot, so let's sum it up. In short, normal is normal, plunge is plunge. Charge attacks level 2 will do pyro damage. Upon hit, summon a hat. This hat will taunt and deal damage if destroyed by any way. Important to remember, level 2 charge attack will consume a portion of Lyney HP till it reach 60%. Then it will no longer consume anything. And each level charge attack will grant you a stack. Max stack is 5. Elemental skill, deal AoE pyro damage, consume all the stacks you currently have at that moment. It also will heal you besides dealing extra damage based on how many stacks were consumed. Important to remember, Lyney's skill will cause any hat on the battlefield to explode dealing AoE pyro damage. Last is Elemental Burst, turn into a cat on a hat, zooming around, dealing pyro damage to nearby opponents. When the duration ends, deal AoE pyro damage and summon 1 hat on the ground and grant 1 stack. Next up is Lyney's Ascension or passive skills. Whatever you call them. First one is for exploration. You display the location of nearby resources unique to Fontaine and on the minimap. The second one is for fatings. If Lyney consumes HP when firing off a prof arrow, the green marking hat summoned by the arrow will, upon hit an opponent, restore 3 energies to Lyney and increase damage dealt by 80% of his attack. The last one is also for fating. I hate reading, but sadly this one I can't really sum it up or make it short, so here it go. The damage Lyney deals to opponents affected by Pyro will receive the following buff. Increase the damage dealt by 60%. Each Pyro party member other than Lyney will cause the damage dealt to increase by an additional 20%. Lyney can deal up to 100% increased damage to opponents affected by Pyro in this way. Overall, these are very good Ascension skills. They provide some ER and allow damage buff, setting him up to be played in a mono Pyro team where there are at least 2 or more Pyro characters in the same party. Usually this is where we start talking about weapons, but since Lyney is a special case, therefore we're gonna talk about his artifact sets first instead. Okay, so we had one good news, kinda two, but one good news and one bad news. The good news is Lyney had a best in slot artifacts. The bad news is it released on the same day as himself, so no pre-farm. But there are the second sets that can be temporarily used while you're farming for his best set. Anyway, the best in slot in the newest set, Hunter, amazing passive, grants bonus damage on normal and charge attacks, and extra crit rate. At max stacks, grant 36% crit rate, 12% per stack, each stack lasts 5 seconds, max at 3. But since this set will be released on the same day as him, in the meantime, I recommend y'all to use the myth, the legendary Lava Walker set. Use this as a placeholder to get the best in slot, unless you had this set with a perfect substat, then yeah, you can keep it. Okay, you might wondering, dude, okay, cool and all, but why is artifacts before weapon? It changed nothing. Well, here's the trick, people. Lyney's Ascension stat is crit rate, which means at level 90, he will have 19.2% crit rate for free. Now, adding that to the 36% from the Hunter, boom, you now had 55.2% crit rate without even substat. Ayaka player know this feeling the best, trust. Anyway, with that being said, my weapon recommendation will be based on the foundation that we had a 55+% crit rate for free. So, we are only aiming for crit damage and maybe attack. Maybe because Lyney also receiving a lot of attacks percentage buff. Animal wouldn't really matter or change anything that significantly. Pause if you got it. If you like any of the graphs or want to save them, they are available in my guide pictures edition, available on Instagram, Facebook, and HoYoLab. Oh, and a little touch on the 5-star section. Skywork and Amos work too. Amos? Amos is fine, but Skywork can rival Thundering Pulse. Back to the artifacts. This time, let's talk about numbers, stats. Pause if you gotta. But yeah, most of this was given and introduced by me in an earlier sections. The only stats that you really should care about besides crit damage is ER. Even that, Lyney ER is quite low in my opinion, so you shouldn't have any trouble to balancing them. And in case you don't know the icon, I recommend it to go attack on Sands, Pyro on Goblet, and crit damage on Circlet. For Lyney, I recommend to max out his normal and charge attack first, since most of his damage comes from his charge attacks. After that, you can slowly level up both his skill and burst, because they still do a great chunk of damage. Like a good, great chunk of damage. Yeah, don't skip them. Last but not least is Constellations. In short, all of his Constellations are decently good. The recommendation is C3, 4, and 6. All of them help Lyney to do more damage from his charge attacks, one way or another. I'm not gonna read everything since you can do that way better than I ever could, and definitely sound a lot better too. Okay. Team building. I recommend, I begging, I demanding you to play him in a mono pyro team where there are at least 2 or more pyro characters. Okay, that's a joke. I know this is a gacha game and not everyone get everything that they want, or you just want to play the game how you want to play it. That's the main reason why I always add a bit here and there to make sure you always had an option. Don't worry, I gotcha. Once again, pause if you gotta. But anyway, Bennett, he is very strong and is heavily recommended to be paired with Lyney in any team composition that you can come up with. After that, you can plug this and that here and there. That does not mean any character, by the way. To keep it as mono pyro, those characters are gonna be Animal or Geo. Oh, and Dendro too, but not really. In team number 1, I use Zhangling and Kazuha for extra damage and grouping. Lyney damage is mostly single target, so a bit of AoE and grouping will help a bunch in some situation. Team number 2, I use the Geo duo, Abedo and Zhongli. Amazing duo, provide extra damage and defensive tools, especially valuable since Lyney is quite squishy. And like I say, you can plug here and there, this and that, so this is my favorite, well, personal favorite team right now. So in this team, I use Lyney, Zhangling, Bennett, and Zhongli. Lyney and Bennett that are given, using Zhangling for extra damage and energy particles, using Zhongli for the defensive tool that he provides, which is very valuable on units like Lyney because he is very squishy. On paper, Lyney could work on some reverse melt vape type team, but since I want to release this video on the day version 4.0 get released, I'm not gonna mention any reverse melt or vape type team since I'm not sure of any of it yet. So we will update on that later. Yeah, I'd rather to be safe than sorry. And that's it. Thank you for tuning in and stick around with me. I know it's been so long since the last time I update. Since last time I post a video actually. But yeah, been on vacation. Just come back, feel better, get ready to work. Had a lot to catch on. Apparently there's a whole new character that I like completely skipped over. Her name like Kirara or something. She's like a cat that turned into a box instead of a hat. So yeah, I'm still looking into her and still try to catch up all of the Art Conquest. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, travelers.